With their 14th coaster opening next season, Six Flags Over Texas sports a pretty strong collection of different and unique rides. However, with Aquaman next year and Joker in 2017, this once top-of-the-chain park hasn't seen a standout addition since New Texas Giant in 2011. And since 2001, only 4 roller coasters total have been added to this park, and one of those being an RMC conversion. So let's see what could be coming after Aquaman. Let's see what's next for Six Flags Over Texas. So as I stated earlier, after the park received the trio of Mr. Freeze in 98, Batman in 99, and Titan in 2001, this park has been left out to dry by the standards of being the first Six Flags park. This is held up as a major park in the chain, and it needs some help, so let's start with what they need to fortify this lineup. The park sports a decent top 3 in the first RMC in New Texas Giant, a Juvenile Hyper in Titan, and a premier launch coaster Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast that can also be found at Six Flags St. Louis. Now, none of these are a true standout coaster. Top of the chart, it's just not there. But having 3 pretty good rides is a nice top of the lineup. For inversions, you have Batman the Ride, the clone B&M Invert, as well as the old school Shockwave with its brain-melting double loop. Both supply some strong intensity around their inversions, while Batman is more of a complete layout, but Shockwave is very unique. Joker also flips riders around, but the 4D free spins are far from traditional inversions, and it's another cloned experience. For families, they sport Runaway Mountain, an indoor premier coaster with a fun theming element and surprisingly enjoyable ride, as well as Judge Roy Scream, the classic smaller scale out and back Woody, and Pandemonium, the clone Gerschlauer spinner. For a more unique ride experience is also the intimate bobsled La Vibora, and it sits in the front of the park as well, a bit rough but definitely entertaining. Then throw in a pair of mine trains and a kiddie coaster for those who are just getting started out, and the current 13 coasters give a little bit of everything. Now, once Aquaman opens, it'll be a unique experience to this hemisphere, as well as another launch and water-based attraction for the Texas heat, but it doesn't really check that standout box either. As for the major holes, the park doesn't have too many that really jump off the page. I think what the big lack here is some really good floater airtime. The only bit in the park is really the one hill on Titan, while New Texas Giant is almost all ejector, and Shockwave gives some sharp pops of ejector. Now, unfortunately, the go-to for floater airtime is a B&M Hyper, and it's pretty much ruled out by Titan. But it could also be hard to fit anywhere, so it's just not a good fit here. Then there's the inversion count. With Batman being the only ride with more than 2 traditional inversions, the park could just use more. I would love to see something here inversion-based that is a bit more graceful. The park is so stacked with intensity on almost all its coasters, but it lacks a great change of pace ride. Now, there are plenty of choices here. B&M only has 1 coaster here, and with models like the Wing, Dive, and Flyer all around the table and unique to the area, they could add those massive inversions with some strong hang time to really diversify the forces of the lineup. However, with the financial troubles of the theme park industry and Six Flags' tendency to be more discount ads of late, that could be an issue with B&M never really working cheap. That being said, a dive or wing that coasts over the pathways or graces the front of the park could really offer something really different feeling than anything else in the park. Think of a ride like Griffin or Gatekeeper and how they interact with their locations. But once again, Six Flags would need to open their wallets a little bit to afford something like this. The other small niche I would love to see filled in this park is a full circuit launch coaster. Mr. Freeze and Aquaman are fine, and they deliver the launch, but they're both being shuttle coasters. They feel different than something that would really send riders through a full course. The big 3 players here that come to mind and could really help with those big inversions I mentioned earlier are Mach, Premier, and Gerschlauer. Mach already sports multi-launch attractions with solid airtime moments and hang-time-based inversions that seem to check every box this park could ask for. Looking at a ride like Copperhead Strike, it has a weaker launch, but it features a complete layout, even if the inversions are smaller than we were looking. However, Mach is similar to B&M and it operates at a pretty costly price tag, and before Aquaman, the chain didn't really have any big history working with them. Now, Six Flags does love working with Premier, however, and they have installed launch coasters across the chain for years, and it could add something similar to West Coast Racers or Icebreaker. Now, the rides feature decent intensity and some good forces. However, a spike like Icebreaker would probably be too similar to Freeze, and West Coast Racers isn't quite as elegant and graceful as I was looking for. They could easily deliver a custom layout that works for that scenario as well, so I think this is a strong contender. Finally, we have Gerstlauer, a true wild card as they haven't worked with the chain since the accident on New Texas Giant in this park. But if the two companies could extend an olive branch, how perfect would a Shellraiser style Eurofighter work here? A launch followed by a massive hang time filled inversion layout and a beyond vertical drop. Now besides Mr. Freeze's spike, the park lacks a true vertical drop. Could also work for a dive coaster like Griffin. Moving on, there also seems to be a missing modern wooden coaster in this park, with maybe a more twister style layout. Now I didn't get to ride Judge Roy Scream, but the consensus seems to be that it's just an alright coaster, an old school out and back Woody. That being said, besides Goliath at Great America, we haven't seen a Six Flags wooden coaster open since 2009 with Apocalypse, and I don't really see them getting back into that market here. Now, besides a twister and sharp Airtime coaster already kinda exist, I mean, you can kinda push New Texas Giant into that mold, and I don't think the park would see much marketing potential in another wooden roller coaster. So if I had to narrow it down, I'd probably pick a B&M or Premier launch coaster. Now, dives typically sit with layouts around 550 feet by 450 feet, while wings can be anywhere from 450 feet by 350 feet to massive sprawling out and back style rides like Gatekeeper. Now, the Premier launch coasters like West Coast Racers sit around 300 by 800 feet, but it's built up around the area. Looking at more at a ride like Skyrocket, it's about 500 by 400 feet. Now, the biggest issue for this park is going to be deciding where to build. As for open space, there really isn't too much as the park is packed in between two highways. The park could dodge high tension wires between Titan and New Texas Giant, or look at the garbage and maintenance area around Harley Quinn and Joker. However, I would guess the next big addition comes with the removal of something in the park already. I see two real likely possibilities here. The first is the removal of a maintenance-filled low-capacity coaster. Lobby Bora is an aging bobsled that does provide a unique ride, but it could be replaced and it wouldn't be overly missed, especially if it's replaced with something great. It sits up front and center, and it's pretty ugly as one of the first coasters you see from the parking lot. Now, 550 feet by 450 feet for the coaster is no small area either, and the room to run along the park or into the parking lot is available for a larger ride. It would be so nice to see something bright and shiny grace this space instead of what looks like an old multicolored water slide. The other would be more of a middle of the park removal. Yosemite Sam's Gold River Adventure has been closed since 2018 due to flooding damage. Now, since then, the characters have been removed from the outside and signage has been covered by Flash Pass ads. I think it's safe to say that this ride is not long for the park. The only real question is what replaces it and if they want to save the building for something else. Now, I say tear it out and replace it with a coaster that winds up and around the area, over the river or even over the Rapids ride. Taking out the space from the small theater across the path as well leaves a decent little 350 by 350 foot section of land. Now, this is probably where a high-flying wing or dive would be best, but it could also prove challenging to fit. Construction would also have to handicap the flow of traffic since this is the main path in the park, and it could deter building the ride there. But overall, I think if they're willing to close for a little while in the off-season, they could get it done. So overall, my final prediction for the park would have to be a new B&M wing coaster to take the place of Lobby Bora. I would love to see it stretch out over the drive into the park and let it greet guests like Gatekeeper does for Cedar Point. Hell, you can even put over the front gate and make it really picturesque. It would be a solid top 5 coaster in the park if it's done right, and it really diversifies a lineup that is so dependent on intensity-driven rides. As for when we can see it come, it may be a bit. I hope Six Flags comes back around in 2024 to this park to deliver a new coaster, as Aquaman was supposed to be a 2020 attraction, then a 2021 attraction, and was the only coaster in the chain to be pushed back a full 2 years. Latest, I think, would be around 2026, but this is a once flagship park in the chain, and it deserves better than to wait that long. Now, as always, I'll give my dream scenario, which would probably be that Shellraiser-esque attraction. Give a full layout of massive and different inversions that just delivers so much different experiences than everything else in the park. However, I really doubt that those two companies are going to work together anytime soon. We just see Six Flags tend to go back to the same manufacturers. So what do you think this park should add next, and when do you expect Six Flags to add to their first park again? Let me know below, and feel free to check out the rest of this playlist for more What's Next videos, and for daily content, check out Island Coasters on Instagram. Let me know where you want me to see breakdown next. Until next week, that's all from the shores of Island Coasters.